Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. And welcome back to another episode of Off the Comma. I am very excited to be back and to continue to do this work. It's such an exciting thing to be a part of this podcast. And I'm also excited that with this episode, we are starting kind of a new chapter of the podcast, and we're actually bringing the video element into our production. I've always had the honor and the privilege to be able to talk face to face with my guests via Zoom, but we haven't used the video files before. And so we are now making agreements with our guests and using the video component. And Alice, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment, is going to be one of our first guests to be with us on camera. So very excited to feature that. Love to have your thoughts and, drop your reactions in the comments and in the social media posts. Let me know what you think of the visual element. But with that said, let's jump into our guest today and this week. So we have with us Alice Yeh, and I am very excited because I have not had an opportunity to meet Alice before. And so, like so many of my guests, I'm very excited to meet her through this conversation today, to learn about her through her story, and to add her to this amazing community of storytellers that we have on Off the Comma. So I'm going to stop rambling. And Alice, I'm going to let you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Why don't you start with telling us, how would you like to be known? And then, what would you like for us to know about you? What's important for us to know? And I'll shut up and let you jump in.
Thank you, Paul, for the very warm welcome. And I'm excited to be here and share my story. Um, and yeah, so what I would like to be known, I think what I like to be known and words that describe me that come to mind is adventurous, adaptable, and resilient. And those really, I think, define the core being or my core values as well. And so I really resonate with that. And so
Mm.
also big on learning, very curious person. And so learning and growth are also important to me. And when I look back on my life, I realize a lot of the decisions I made were driven by curiosity and the desire to learn and
Mm.
grow. Um, and yeah, some hobbies. I love to read. I'm a big yoga and Pilates person. For the new year, I just started crocheting. So that's my new
Oh.
2025 hobby.
This is cool. I mean, I always love to hear what folks are involved in, and I so appreciate some of the things that you're sharing so far. I mean, just selfishly and self-referencing learning. That's my career. It's one of the things that I do. But it's so cool that you mentioned crochet because I'm currently traveling, doing a lot of traveling. I'm kind of
Mhm.
traveling around the country and so forth. And so, I don't really shop a lot, but I do when I'm exploring, poke around into local stores and things like that. I'm seeing a lot more activity around crochet and these just real cool crafts and
Yeah.
artisans who are doing things with crochet. Before we get into your story, like what got you into crochet and what's your favorite part of it?
Yeah. For me, I have wanted to tap into my creative side for quite some time. And yes, I could do that through my work or posting on social media, things like that. But I felt the need to really create something with my hands. And so, yes, crochet seems to be a big trending hobby. And so I was like, hey, why not? I've also was targeted. Some online
Mm.
advertising were targeting towards me around the Christmas time. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to ask for like a kit as like a beginner learning thing and we'll see how it goes. So that's
Okay.
really how that started.
I love the reference to the targeted, but it sounds like a willing participant, right? Or a willing target.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, and it seems to support what you said about learning. It's, something new. It's another thing. It's going to be fun, but it's also probably a challenge to take on that new skill and learn how to do it. It's not something we learn in school, is it?
Yes,
Nice.
exactly.
Nice. Well, let's get into your story too. We haven't talked about your story. Like I said earlier, I'll get to learn about you through your story today. I'll ask the same 5 questions that I ask of every guest, and that'll kind of really create the space for you to kind of share. And before we get into those 5 questions, one of the things I like to do with every guest, Alice, is you know, to start with a question for you, which is as you think ahead to the next, 35 or 40 minutes or so that you're going to be sharing your story with us today, what would be your intention for yourself?
Yeah, for me, I think my intention is really to share my story in the hopes that people who hear it, it resonates with them and be inspired by it. I think if I had heard stories of similar stories of what I had gone through, I think that would have helped me during my times where I felt stuck. And I know that
Mm,
this whole podcast is about when you find yourself feeling stuck. And so I think the hearing other people's stories and how they were able to move forward can hopefully provide information and guidance and inspiration for others. And so that's really my intention here, is to be able to do the same.
I love that. And that's exactly what we do here. And so my intention is to support you in your intention today by, giving you the space, giving you the floor to share your story. And as with every guest and with every episode, so that there will be people out there who will see a little bit of themselves in you and your story. They will feel a little bit more connected, maybe a little less alone.
Yep.
And in the best of cases, maybe inspired or empowered to do something that they've been wanting to do.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Let's jump into it. So, the first question, Alice, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Yeah, and so I think my biggest struggles when I think about my career have been this feeling of feeling stuck in my career. And there's really two major inflection points in my career that I can think of where I really felt stuck. And when I was feeling stuck, it was that feeling of what you said, feeling alone, feeling like I had exhausted all my options, or I didn't know what options were out there,
Mm,
and feeling quite frustrated. And so when I was feeling stuck in my career, I think the early part of my career, I was supported through school, or when you graduate from college, there's a lot of resources out there for the early stage of your career.
hmm
And I think as you go through your career, when you reach this middle part, I did go to business school. So after business school, there were resources for that too. But
hmm
then after some time in this mid career point, I felt like, and I've talked to a lot of people who felt similarly, I felt like we were all just kind of trying to figure it out, but we didn't really know what we were doing. And I do think that there's a bit of a lack of resources around this mid-stage career. There's a lot of resources for executive when you're a leader, or if you're looking to retire. But I do feel like there's this gap. And that's how I felt, where at these 2 points in my career, I felt like I was really stuck. The first was so after business school, I worked at Google, and Google was known at the time this is like 10 years ago,
hmm
to
hmm
be one of the best places to work at. And I had a great time working there, learned a lot. But where I felt stuck was I felt I was hitting a ceiling in terms of my career. I couldn't get promoted, couldn't get any advancements. I was looking to switch out of teams and look for roles internally, but no matter what I did, I just couldn't move. And it was very frustrating. And tried to do the things that people tell you to do: work harder, work longer hours, take on more projects, take on more responsibilities. That unfortunately led to burnout. Um,
mm,
and and yeah, I just felt really stuck and unsure what to do next. I was at this company that is supposed to be one of the best companies to work for. And a part of me also felt guilty for feeling like something was missing and wanting
mm,
more. even though I looked very successful on paper, even my parents were like, oh, you should just be happy with what you have. And yet I wasn't. And so
Mm,
I felt really stuck. And unfortunately, the decision was made for me where I got laid off. And
mm,
so went through this grieving process that you go through after a job loss. It was definitely a surprise. I was laid off because my team, the leader, decided to reorg, and my team was determined to be no longer needed. And
mm,
so I did have the option to look internally for another role, but since I had found so much, so since I found it so challenging to find a role, I really dug deep to think about, do I still want to work at a place where I felt like I wasn't valued, where I couldn't get promoted, where the my input wasn't really valued, and so it didn't feel like the right move was to stay. And I made the decision to leave. I was the only person who decided to take the severance and leave the company. Everyone else
mm,
decided to stay. And I remember at the time, I decided to take the severance and I didn't have a new job lined up. I remember at the time my parents were like, why would you do that? You should just find to stay with the company, all the benefits. And I decided to take time off. And at the time, it was rare for people to have breaks on their resumes.
mm.
Um, and so I definitely got a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, you won't be able to find another job. What are you going to do when you run out of money? How long are you going to take this time off for? And I decided I just wanted to really take time off to focus on myself and really focus on what I wanted to do next in my career. And even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I wanted to take that time to really figure it
Mhm.
out. And I was planning to take, I think, a couple months off. It ended up being almost a year.
Mm.
And and yeah, at the time people were like shocked. They're like, how can you take time off without having another job lined up? That's so
Yeah.
brave, that's so reckless. I
And
heard all kinds of
especially
things.
10 years ago, right?
Yes.
Like this
Yeah.
is before the pandemic when everything started
Yeah.
to change.
Yeah. So yeah.
Alice, can I jump in for a moment?
Oh yeah, of course.
And I will periodically, and I'll reflect things. So anytime I reflect something back, and you're like, no, it doesn't land, by all means, tell me, correct me. I'm curious though, and I know you've got more of your story to tell, but what really started coming up for me that I'm curious about is as you were describing this kind of sense of not getting where you wanted, not going where you wanted to go before you made the decision, or rather before the decision was made
Yeah.
for you to leave the company and you made that choice. At that point where you were feeling kind of stuck and you were describing what that was like, what was it that you felt like was missing for you?
Yeah, I just felt really frustrated because I know I'm a smart, capable, accomplished person, and yet I felt like something was missing from my
Hmm.
career. This sense of fulfillment or feeling of success. Even though I had this great job that was definitely high paying and had a lot of benefits, I when I compared myself to my peers, I still felt like I was behind and everyone else seemed to have it all figured out and I didn't.
Mm,
Maybe they just put on a better mask. But but later when I really thought about it, it was really that sense of purpose that was missing. I
okay.
didn't feel very connected to the work that I was doing. And I couldn't figure out, or I couldn't see how the work I was doing was making an impact. And
Hmm.
I'll go into this more as I go through my story, but looking back, I realized that it wasn't really fulfilling or meeting or aligning with my core value of really wanting to feel like I'm making a contribution or making a difference.
Mm,
And because that was missing, I couldn't feel connected to the work I was doing. And so that's what I later identified was missing, but but at the time I really struggled with that.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like, I mean, first of all, what a difficult place to be, because what you described, it's like other folks are recognizing, you're even recognizing, it's like on one level and on its surface, this place checks a lot of boxes and
Hmm.
it's popular and well known. But what I believe you're kind of showing us so far in your story is like you can be in what is considered to be the best of places, but if it's not connecting or resonating, and if there's something missing for you, that has a huge influence and effect on the whole thing, right? And
Absolutely, yeah.
it seems like that sense of missing, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that sense of something missing purpose, helped inform your choice when you decided to go ahead and take the severance and leave.
Yes, it did. And it also really, I think, taking that time off to take to take the severance and leave would helped me really understand myself and take that time to really understand what was missing. And so part
Mm,
of me during this time off, I did a whole bunch of things that I wanted to do, that I didn't have time for. I traveled. I did yoga teacher training, and even started a travel blog. And
mm,
so one of these things that I identified was that I wanted to work at in my next role, I decided that I really wanted to work someplace where I could feel like I was making a contribution. I could feel like I was making a difference. I think having worked in extremely large companies like Google, and prior to Google and business school, I worked at JP Morgan, another very large company.
mhm,
And at both of these companies, I felt like a small cog in a very giant machine. And so it was very hard for me to really see the difference and the impact that I could have. And that's where I felt like I was missing that connection. And
mm,
so during this time off, I decided, okay, since I'm missing that connection, what can I do to feel that in the next role? And my decision was to go to a smaller company. So, living out here in San Francisco, there's a lot of startups. And so I decided to try working at startups where I could have that feeling of contribution, and see the impact that I have at a smaller company.
mhm,
And another decision I made was to also look at industries that were very interesting to me, or passionate focused industries. So I love to travel, and so I focused a lot on looking at travel and hospitality companies. And so after my year off, when I decided to recruit again, I ended up at a hospitality startup. And unfortunately, I was only there for, I would say, almost a year, and then
mhm,
COVID happened. So I got laid off again due to COVID.
mm. Not just the
Um,
company, but the whole industry, right? Yeah.
yes, yes.
Mm,
Yeah. So yeah, I again facing another layoff. This one didn't hurt as much because I I expected that. I think when all the news started coming out about COVID, and obviously the whole industry was not doing well, no one was traveling, of course, and so this was foreseeable.
mhm.
And
I have a question
oh
for you,
yeah,
if
of
I
course.
may. So now you've taken this time, you've connected with yourself, and you have realized something about yourself, and literally took the steps to find and create a place where you can have that connection that you were craving, right? When this happened, despite the fact that, this was unfortunate for you, did you feel like you had arrived at a sense of, or a closer approach to the connection that you were looking for?
Did feel like I was closer, but not altogether there, because I think in my search for switching into a smaller company that was a passion focus, I forgot to or overlooked some red flags around culture.
Mm,
And so, thankfully, I think due to COVID, I got laid off. But I was starting to feel that the culture was not a right fit for me anyway.
Hmm.
Um, and so these were just learnings that I've learned over time of what to look for as I think about roles and where I want to go with my career. And so I found another role. And I was there for the next role I was at a even smaller, earlier stage startup. Again, I was chasing that feeling of impact and making a difference, and I felt that going to an even smaller company would help with that. And so I went from a late stage startup to now an early stage startup. And I was there for almost 4 years until 2023. And I would say this is the second time, because I was saying that there's two times in my career that I really felt really stuck. And
Hmm.
so after 4 years at last company that I was at, I started feeling stuck again. And this is where I really felt lost, because lost and frustrated, because I felt like I had tried changing industries, I tried changing the size of companies, different roles, and yet I still felt like something was missing and I
Hmm.
was running out of options. I felt like I tried everything and nothing seems to work. And so I decided to seek professional help because I didn't know what else to do. I tried everything I could. And so I decided to work with a coach, to really help me figure out what it is that I was seeking that I couldn't find.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where the coach that I worked with, um, Sophie Bennett Herve at the Reset, she really helped me learn about really taking the time to learn more about myself. And I think part of this podcast is really, what you're saying, like sitting on a comma and really taking that time to reflect and become more self-aware of what it is that you're feeling, what you're going through, and eventually help you figure out what you want.
Hmm.
And so when I worked with Sophie, my coach, she really helped me learn about my core values. And this was mind blowing to me because your core values are what drive your personality. And you may not know it, but it actually drives a lot of your decision making process. And so when your core values are not aligned with your career, especially when it comes to a company culture, when you have different values, it creates that tension, and you are more likely to experience burnout.
Hmm.
And so, working with a coach, she helped me figure out more about my values, what I wanted, what I struggled with, and through that work, I figured out or learned, that I really liked to learn, and really feel like I can make an impact. And so that really
Hmm.
came out from the values work that I did. And so that's where I was able to recognize that that's what was missing from my time at Google and all of these other roles, that I wanted to
Hmm.
feel a connection to the work. I wanted to feel like I had a purpose. And so additionally, through kind of seeking professional help, I through my work with her, I also thought about what was the common thread throughout all of my experiences that really resonated with me, where I felt the most comfortable and excited. And what came out was really helping others and mentoring others and coaching others. And that's the common thread that I could see throughout all of my roles, where I really enjoyed that aspect the most.
Hmm.
And so I had always thought about wanting to be a coach, but it was one of the things that I wasn't sure if I could do it or what that really meant. And so by working with Sophie, my coach, she helped me kind of suss that out a bit more, to see what about coaching really appealed to me and didn't make sense to try that. And so in my head, especially living here in San Francisco, the concept of starting your own business or starting a business is that you have to have this brand new innovative idea that no one's ever thought of before.
Hmm.
But she helped me see that that's incorrect assumption. Anyone could start a business, and any type of business, the idea of restaurants, it's not a new idea or a new business, but yet people are opening new restaurants every day.
Hmm.
And so it's the same with coaching. And now there's a lot of coaches online and available. And so she really helped me see that if other people could do it, why not me? And so I decided to pursue a coaching certification just to learn the skill set and really see if this is really where I wanted to go next. So testing it out. And what's funny is that I think a couple weeks after I started the certification program, I got laid off again for the third time.
Mm.
And this was during all the tech layoffs in 2023. And I decided that it was a sign from the universe to go all in on the coaching journey and see where it takes me. And so yeah, so that's really how I became a career clarity coach. So specifically I work with high achievers who feel stuck in their careers and want to find or figure out what the next step in their career should be. So, not
Mhm.
very different from the story that I or
Yeah.
experiences that I had. Um,
Yeah. Well, if I may, let me just
yes,
jump in for a moment and then I want to go to the second question. You can kind of continue to build here and
yeah,
go back and forth. But it's interesting because what I see in your story, right, is this seeking, this kind of searching, the looking for those points of meaning and purpose that you were talking about. And also, it seems like, there was this quest for meaning and purpose, and sometimes the roles and the jobs ended before you were done. And sometimes it seemed like as a learner, you had kind of learned what you needed to learn, and maybe it was time to move on too, as
right.
well.
Yes,
And yet here you are taking this life experience and applying it to your next thing, which is how can I take what has happened in my life and actually make it something that I can speak about and speak to and help others with.
exactly.
When
Um, oh yeah, go
Oh,
ahead. Yes.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was cutting you off.
No, no, no. I was just going to say that, and that really speaks to the value and the fulfillment I get when I help others, when I feel like I am making a difference and contributing in some way. And so I think being a coach and being able to help people really fulfills that feeling of the purpose that I
Mm.
felt like was missing through my corporate career.
Yeah, that I was just gonna say, I mean, you said it, right? It's like, and there you go. That's what was missing all along. That was the thing. It's like you were doing your thing, but you weren't, doesn't seem like you had the opportunities to do the thing that would help other people, or that you couldn't see the results of
Right.
the work that you were doing. The second question, Alice, is as you look back at the comma that you were sitting on, what did that create for you? And maybe you've already shared some with us, but what else would you add to that answer?
Yeah, so I think taking that time to really reflect and think about myself allowed me to really understand myself better. And I think too often, and I know this was definitely true for me and for the early part of my career, where I was just going with whatever happened. Things were happening to me versus me actually taking proactive steps and taking charge of my career.
Mm.
I think too often people end up as bystanders in their career, or what is it, the like backseat driver, the passenger in a
Yeah.
car versus taking a driver's seat. And things like getting laid off or things that are out of your control and letting that happen to you versus being proactive about it. And so I realized that by taking the time to really reflect and think about what I wanted, that gave me a direction. If you think about like having a compass, knowing what direction I wanted to go in, and then being able to figure out, okay, what are the steps to get there?
Mm,
And that was never, or that wasn't clear to me, and it wasn't until I really took that time to figure it out that that's when it started becoming clearer of where I wanted to go. Then I would be able to figure out, okay, if that's where I want to go, then this is what I should be doing next.
mm. I love that answer, and I love the fact that you focused on here's kind of what came from it. If you don't mind sharing too, and I don't ask this question to kind of like go for the sensational stuff as much as it is like because this is about connection and people seeing themselves in your story. What else did it create for you? Or I guess maybe the question is like when you were in the thick of it and going
Mhm.
through it, what were those feelings?
Mhm.
You know, because you've described frustration
Yes.
and something missing and so forth. Like, kind of when you were going through it, when you were in the thick of it, what did that create too?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely feeling frustrated. I mentioned feeling like I was behind others, or that I was always playing catch up, or feeling that a little bit alone
Mhm.
because everyone else seemed to have figured it out, or they seemed happy with what they were doing.
Say
And
more about that. I'm real curious because this
yeah,
one really kind of resonated with me because a lot of times when people say, "Oh, I feel like I'm behind" or "I'm trying to catch up with
yeah,
others," they're often talking about where they are on the promotion ladder and that sort of
right.
thing. I don't get the sense that's what you're talking about because you're
It
describing purpose and
it
fulfillment.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I am talking about that, but there is still a part of me that's like, oh, well, that person looks really successful, and I'm at this
Mm.
point in my career, and I should also feel successful, but I don't. And even though on paper I may look like I am, but I didn't feel successful.
Mm.
And it was a little bit, it did feel a little lonely because I didn't know who else felt the same. I didn't know if other people felt the same, or if even the people I was comparing myself to, my peers, friends, if they also felt the same. It seemed like people were just going to work and being satisfied with it, and not really talking about wanting more.
Yeah. You talked
And
about, maybe they wore the mask better, right?
right,
Or
right,
yeah. And if I'm taking you away from your story, then bring me back. But at that time, what did you consider success to be? Like, what was it? You've shared that you were looking for purpose and
right.
meaning, but kind of in that vein of doubt that you were having, what was it you felt like you were supposed to be pursuing?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was actually it's a great segue, because I was about to talk about learning to redefine my
Mm,
definition of success. And so at the time I was chasing promotions. I talked about how I really wanted to get promoted at Google, not because I really wanted to, but because I felt like that's what I should be doing, and chasing the title, chasing a job change. And yes, it would come with more money and better pay. Like, who doesn't want that? But it wasn't necessarily what was driving me. And I felt like I was chasing something that I wasn't really sure I wanted in the first place, but I felt like that's what I should be doing because
mm,
everybody else says or was doing the same thing. And that's where, after working with a coach to really redefine that definition of success, and realizing that what people say in terms of promotions, or job titles, or where you should be in life,
mhm.
that it may not necessarily be applicable to you. And I know I struggled a lot with that with my parents. They come from a different generation where it is about job security and not necessarily about this idea of purpose or fulfillment. So it was hard to discern what was truly something I wanted versus what people were telling me what I should want.
Mm,
And that was where I felt like I really taking that time to really figure that out was really
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, and I can hear the frustration too in it's not just your own doubts and kind of questions, it's they're coming from outside of you and all these different places, and they're not even consistent in the way they come at you, right? These
Mhm,
folks over here look like they're happy. I feel like perhaps I should be more like them. These folks over here are saying, you shouldn't be, questioning or second guessing. You should be more accepting. Then there's your own kind of line of inquiry, and so that can create a lot of confusion in terms of just not even know, like, who do I lean on to
mhm.
try to give me a direction to even decide what I align with, right?
Right, exactly.
Alice, the third question, yeah, I feel like you've answered some of it, but this one really opens up a lot. And go back into your story however much you
Mhm.
need to. What have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
Yeah, so I think when I took the sabbatical, when I look back, I realized that that's where I really started this journey of self discovery, and I think I started taking the steps to do that. I don't think I fully figured it out then, but when I worked with a coach, that's when I really was able to figure it all out, and so what I learned about myself was really learning about my values, learning about what drives my decision making process, why I make the choices I make. And I think that's really important because that's how you can use that information to make your decisions going forward
Mm,
and recognizing when things are not aligned with your values more easily as well.
yeah.
The other thing that I really learned was, like we were just talking about, really understanding what my personal definition of success was. And for me, that is that feeling of knowing that I've made a contribution or I have some sort of impact. Eventually, I want to be able to have the financial and time freedom to work when I want and do the things that I want that feel fulfilling. And money is, of course, we all need money to be able to live and survive, but
Hmm.
it's not necessarily a key driver for me. And for
Mm.
some people, it might be. For me, if I have enough to survive, that's enough. I don't need to be, Jeff Bezos or
Mm.
Elon Musk.
Which is
And I
good because
don't
they're not giving you any of their money anyway.
exactly.
Oops, did I? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I want to kind of underscore that point for
Yeah.
you on your behalf, and you correct me if I mistake this. Like, what I'm hearing from you is that success for you is about meaning, it's about purpose, it's about the impact and the contribution that you have on others, and that if you get paid for it, that's great, but the money isn't the measuring stick. It's the impact. It's how you
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
It's how you feel good about what you did. I mean, is this a fair summary of what you're saying?
Exactly. Like when I was getting paid quite a lot of money when I worked at Google, I if money was really a driver for me, I would have just stayed there because I could have continued making more money and not care about learning more or not care
Mm.
about feeling like I was contributing. And so I did unconsciously make that decision, realize not realizing that that was one of the reasons why I wanted to leave. And so now that I know myself better, I can recognize for future opportunities if this is something that where I can feel like I can make a difference or have an impact where I can learn and grow, then this is more interesting to me than just a higher paycheck.
And it's unconventional, isn't it? I mean, particularly in those spaces. Ironic I'm pontificating a little bit here. So, jump on if you want or take it where you want to because it's your story. But it is interesting because of what it says about you and your experience that you've been describing and sharing with us, right? Because on the one hand, these tech companies were once known as places of innovation and creativity, and this is where, the really out there people went to work because that's how they could express themselves and so forth. And yet now they're not really known for those things, and they're really more about the money and the drive and the hustle and the grind and so forth. And it strikes me as someone out here on the outside looking at and hearing your story that you were very much kind of a nonconformist in that space. Like you were a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. Like you were there and you were doing the job and contributing, but kind of very much I don't know what word comes to you. It's your story.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, and I think when I think about my path and my journey, it is definitely non-conforming. And I had gone through my life and my career of checking off the right boxes, and I went to Ivy League schools. I basically did the best that you could do according to most people, and yet I still felt like something was missing. And so
Mhm.
I think my message to people is that if you feel like you're doing something for the sake of doing something, or you're just following a path because that's what you were told, or what you thought was the right thing, I think it's probably a great time to take a step back and really reflect on
Mm.
that. And if that is truly what you want and truly the right path for you, um, and really understanding what your definition of success is, and what you really want to get out, in terms of purpose and fulfillment. And I had heard about purpose and fulfillment, but it was a very it can be sometimes a very existential concept to grasp.
Mhm.
I know I had struggled with it, and even when I was at Google or early parts of my career, because I felt like the framework, at least the framework that I've learned and that I use now, which is Ikigai, I feel like that is the best framework to think about purpose. But Ikigai, for those who don't know, it is the Japanese concept for the definition, or I guess the translation is like a reason for being. And so
Mhm.
to it's a great framework to use to help you determine what purpose looks like for you. And how that comes out is that it's four areas, and you're looking for the intersection of those four areas. So the first is what you like, or what your passions are. The second is what you're good at, so your strengths. The third is what the world needs.
Mhm.
And the fourth is what you can be paid for. And so, what the world needs and what you can be paid for, I really struggled with that, because it's at least what the world needs. There's so much that the world needs. Like, what does that really mean? And I had really struggled with really identifying what that meant. And now when I think about it, the way I think about it now to help me answer this question is, where and how do I want to have an impact on others? And when I reframed this part of the framework into where and how do I want to have an impact on others, then that answer became a lot clearer. There's work that you can do through the communities that you're in, any causes that you're interested in, or even just closer to you, like on your
Mhm.
day-to-day job. What does that where How do you want to have an impact in your job or your role?
Yeah.
And so thinking about the intersection of these four areas really helped me identify clearly the purpose.
It's interesting too. Tell me based on your experience, because I only have a kind of surface level familiarity with it and have done an exercise with it maybe once or twice, right? But it's really interesting because I think a lot of people will approach it from the standpoint of where I need to be is where all four of those zones or circles intersect or overlap, right? And yet, this is what's so fascinating about purpose. I mean, I'm a coach too, so you and I
Mhm.
speak similar languages, right? Is that purpose is so like um broad and flexible, like it can fit and taste and feel differently for everybody. And as
Right.
you were sharing this about ikigai, it was reminding me of kind of the time or two that I experimented with it. And it's interesting because similar to you, right? Like it's got to be meaningful, purpose driven. I'm not motivated by the money so much. And rather than find the point that intersected all four of those, it's also possible that you can, with your eyes wide open, say, actually, I'm going to do something over here in just one of the zones, right? That it's
Mhm.
meaningful for me or what have you. And yet I might still choose the what do I get paid for. They may not intersect in terms of I'm doing the passion work and getting paid
Yeah.
for it,
Right.
but it's an and, right? It's also
Right.
possible that no, I'm going to choose to get paid for that work, and that work specifically because that work maybe isn't what I'm passionate about, but it creates the free time for me to do
Yes.
the thing I'm passionate about,
Yep.
or it pays enough for me to be able to afford to contribute and
Mhm.
donate as much as I want to, or what have you. So
Exactly.
it's fascinating, right? Like ideally, which I don't think many of us really ever land on ideal, it's at the intersection of all four
Right.
zones. But yet you can land in any zone with very conscientious and intention driven senses of purpose around why
Yeah.
you're going to land there, right?
Exactly. And yeah, and part of that is knowing, yeah, exactly. And part of doing this exercise or reflection is to identify where you are, and if there are changes that need to be made, great. If not, you're more conscious of, okay, I am getting paid just to do this job, and that's how I feel about it. I
Hmm.
know I'm not going to get anything more out of it, but it allows me the freedom to do all these other things. And if you know that, then if you're spending too much time at work, then you know that maybe that's not where you should be spending your time, because
Hmm.
it's not necessarily driving to the places where you're feeling more purpose and fulfillment. So do what you need to do, but don't necessarily stress or worry about it more than you need to.
I love that you shared that, and I know it's going to show up a little bit later in your acknowledgments too. Alice, the fourth question is what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma, or even what is changing?
Yeah. I think what has changed for me is uh, being able to be more proactive and more conscious and intentional about the
Mm,
steps that I'm taking, not only in my career, but mostly in my career, since that's where I've been focused on, but also thinking about outside of work, how I'm being intentional with my time and energy, and really being intentional with that. And so as a result of this reflection and understanding myself better, I can be better informed to make decisions or recognize if I'm feeling out of alignment or if purpose is missing. I can recognize that a lot more easily now, and figure out how to address it. And so I think what I was saying earlier about how often people just go with the flow or react to things, I think taking that time to really self-reflect allows you to be more intentional and proactive
mm.
about whatever area of life that you want to work on.
One thing that I really appreciate from your story, and I've been putting this into practice myself a bit too, is exactly what you just said, and that is demonstrated in your story. It's like it may sometimes be kind of controversial, it may sometimes be nonconformist, it may sometimes go against the opinions of others, but finding you creating and finding the time to
Mhm.
reflect whatever that means for you, however long that means for you, no matter how much other people may question it. Like you said, you made that difficult decision. You said, I'm choosing time over salary so that I can continue to kind of explore this and figure this out. And being able to do that in little ways every day, doing it in big major ways like you did, taking a whole year, almost a whole year off, right? Um, it wasn't really off, was it? You were still very much working, very
Yes,
different way. Is that
yes.
fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I was working on myself. I was working on passion projects um and yeah, just working on different things, not necessarily from a corporate career perspective, but I
Yeah.
was still working.
People think, you take a year off from work and you're sitting around on the couch eating chocolates. And it's like, no, that's only on Tuesday afternoons. The rest of the time is I'm very much doing hard work on figuring, things out about myself. And so, Alice, the last of the questions is, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Yeah. And so I feel very grateful and privileged to now be at a point where, um, in addition to being a career coach, based on my experience and values and that the my strengths based on what we talked about with purpose and ikigai, I feel very aligned with where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to doing work as a career coach, I'm also now working back in the corporate world at a even earlier pre-seed stage startup called Sam, as their head of career, where Sam's goal is to be a support system for women to help them navigate through life's challenges like career, illness, elder care, for a better future by providing the resources and the expert help that they need through a marketplace. And so going back into this corporate career or going back into a corporate setting, now working as a head of career, I'm able to see that I'm very aligned with purpose. The work I'm doing is very impact mission driven. And it's a great combination to combine all of my skill sets that I've gathered over the years from my corporate career, but also the coaching I've been doing and the entrepreneurial aspect, in terms of starting my own business and
Mm-hmm.
applying all of that in this new role. And so I really do feel like I'm now in line with my values and my purpose and feeling like everything is in flow the way it should be. And
Mm-hmm.
unlike back then where I had the Sunday scaries and would be very anxious about going to work, now it's like I'm excited to go to work. I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
to work on something and building something because I feel so aligned with my values and the sense of purpose that I have with the work.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think that's what getting off the comma looks like is feeling that alignment and feeling like you are fulfilled and you have purpose.
And we can see how you smile when you talk about this, right? And I so appreciate that reference to the Sunday scaries because oh, anybody who really knows what that means knows exactly what that means, right? I would also add, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because you talked earlier in your story about connection was one of the things that was missing. And it seems like everything you just shared and the connection with the people that you're going to serve in this role, because those people are you, right? Like
Yes.
career transitions, women who are seeking what it is that's missing for them, and it just seems like there's some of that in there too that really connects you to the people that you're serving.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, it goes back to what I did determined to be my purpose and feeling like I can make an impact and really answer that existential question of what does the world need? And
mm.
I do think the world needs more to offer more support for women who are going through challenges. And that's where I feel that our company can really fill that.
I love that. And at risk of, speaking into the political space because I try to avoid that. It's like this is a time when these types of services and organizations are more needed than ever, and it also seems to prove to me a belief that I have, that is, no matter what's happening in the world and no matter what somebody's taking away, it creates a vacuum that somebody else will fill. And
Hmm.
so there's that too. It's just a personal belief of mine, and I just think that's so cool.
Yes.
So that's a compliment to you and the organization that you're working with.
Thank you. Yes.
Alice, we are nearing the end of our hour. That's the thing about the podcasts, is they all have a limit. I know there's so much more. There were so many points in your story that I was like, oh, I'd love to hear more about this, or I'd love to know more about that. But we'll have to bring it to a close. What I'd love to do is two more things. So first of all, thank you for coming here and sharing your story with us. As always, you're now a member of our community,
Thank you
and
so
you've
much for having me again.
yeah. Well, you've already had an impact on those who are going to be hearing your story, right? How can people find you? So I'll put all the links and the information in the show notes, but if people want to connect with you, just kind of follow you on socials, keep up with you, see what you're doing, maybe connect with you or potentially even reach out to you about the work that you're doing. Walk us through, where are you at?
Yeah, can find me on LinkedIn, Alice Yeh, or I'm on Instagram at Hey Alice Yeh. And if you want to check out my website, it's aliceyehcoaching.com.
Nice. And those links are in the show notes. So go there for the easy click. Last thing, you are here today sharing your story with us. That's what this podcast is all about, is letting people's voices shine and being able to connect to people through their stories, not through their advice or their celebrity or their expertise. And your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to do the same for others in your community. You've already started doing this a little bit, but I call this section acknowledgments. And so it's your opportunity to give a voice, to boost, to lift up others who matter to you. And that can be organizations, causes, it can be other creators, it can be people in your family or circle. So who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll be sure to put their information in the show notes.
Yeah, Sophie Van Erve is at the Reset. She was my coach, and through my work with her, she really helped me to really understand who I was and understand my values and help me better understand myself in order to take those intentional steps and get me to where I am now. So the Reset is her coaching group. And
Mhm.
then I got my coaching certification from the Jay Shetty Certification School. And how I learned about Jay Shetty was really his book, Think Like a Monk. That was really informative for me and really changed or started me thinking a lot about myself and figuring out, started to thinking about purpose. And the second book would be or framework would be really around ikigai. There is a book around it. It goes into a lot more detail into how to think about the different areas and exercises to help you determine your ikigai or your purpose. And then lastly, a short plug for Sam. I
Mhm.
do think our mission is to help women through by providing a support system for them. And as you said, in our current times, it is something that seems to be lacking. And so, if anyone is interested in learning more about Sam and what we do, definitely feel free to check us out at wearesam.co.
Mm. And I believe I'm making an assumption here, but it's an assumption about this organization and just in general, like anyone can help and support women.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be women helping women. Anybody can help and support women. So
Yes.
everybody can go and check out this organization,
Yes.
and or if causes and organizations in your own neighborhood, if you want to stay community based too. So
Yes. Exactly. There's definitely
Alice,
a community aspect to Sam. So yes.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to check it out myself. I was already kind of poking around in there when I was preparing the show notes today. So Thank you, Alice, so much for coming on today, as I said before, and we will be very excited to follow your journey and to see what comes up next for you as well. And just so appreciate you coming and being able to open up your life's experience with us.
Thank you so much. I had a great time sharing my story and spending time with you.
Thank you. What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection, because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.